Hello everyone. Welcome to another test drill series sa Agricultural Economics and Marketing. So marami tayong matututunan ulit ngayong araw na to, especially on the topic of inflation, and we will also talk about ISO-cost, ISO-quant, indifference curve, and budget line dun sa ating last question. And these topics are fundamental sa pag-aaral ng microeconomics and macroeconomics as well. So, simulan na natin. Number one question, sabi niya dito, in economics, the term used to describe the persistent increase in the general price level. So what do you call that term? Yung pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin. Do we call that as flux, inflation, interest, or coordinate? Now, if you're familiar with some of the terms in economics, alam natin na ang sagot na dyan ay inflation. Right? Inflation defines or it is a term used to describe yung pagtaas ng presyo ng pangunahing bilihin. Okay? Now, what is inflation, technically speaking? Again, inuulit ko, this is the concept in macroeconomics which represents yung pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin. And typically, inflation is being measured by an index. We use consumer price index although may tinatawag din tayong producer price index. So ano ba tong CPI na to or yung ating consumer price index? Ito ay isang measure kung saan pinag-aaralan natin yung pagtaas ng presyo over time by comparing a particular basket of good in a base year to the same basket of good in a particular year na gusto nating i-measure. So ang mahalagang concept dito is that may sa CPI, sa Consumer Price Index, mayroon kang basket of good. So for example, itong basket of good na yan, ang gagawin ng mga statistician natin, i-identify nila lahat ng mga goods and services na kinukonsume ng ating consumers. So lahat yan, rice, yung ulam, yung energy, utilities, rent, whatever that is, ilalagay nila yan dito. So yun yung tinatawag nating basket of goods. Now, for each of these goods and services na kinukonsume ni final consumer, may presyo yung mga yan, tama? May presyo yung mga yan and may particular silang demand or let's say utilization. So price times utilization, makukuha mo na ngayon yung total cost of this particular basket of goods. So let's say na itong good na to, itong basket of good na to was measured noong 2021. So yung makukuha nating index dito, yun yung magiging CPI noong 2021. Now, we will now compare the CPI in 2021 sa same basket of goods. So parehas yung laman ng basket na to in 2024. So from this comparison, makikita na natin kung yung CPI ba ay tumaas, so therefore nagkaroon ng inflation, or kung yung CPI ba ay bumaba at nagkaroon ng deflation. So ang mahalagang matandaan natin dito is that the prices of our goods, yung patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo ng ating pangunahing bilihin, is measured through our consumer price index. Typically, although merong producer price index, so yung producer price index is instead of basket of goods na kinokonsume ni final consumer, it would be the basket of goods that is used by your producers. But let's focus with CPI. So CPI, Consumer Price Index, is measured by identifying the goods and services that all of your citizens in the country is using and putting it in one basket. Tapos kukunin natin yung presyo and utilization yan. So magkakaroon tayo ng cost of this market basket. And then, i-compare natin yun to the similar, so parehas na basket, hindi pwedeng magkaiba. So for example, kapag naglagay ka dito ng rice, hindi pwedeng mawala yung rice dito. Or hindi pwedeng wala kang laptop dyan, naglagay ka ng laptop dito sa 2024. Dapat parehas para yung comparison, apples to apples. So, i-compare natin yung CPI nung 2021 sa CPI nung 2024. Makikita natin kung tumaas ba yung presyo, nagkaroon ng inflation, or bumaba ba, nagkaroon ng deflation. So, mathematically speaking, CPI is computed by using this formula. So, cost of market basket in the current year divided by the cost of market basket in the base year times 100. Now, you have to understand, that when we are computing for CPI, kailangan mayroon kang base year. O ano yung base year? Yung base year, diyan natin kino-compare yung presyo nung year na ina-analyze natin. That's base year. So in our case, for example, this one, ang base year natin 2023. So diyan natin i-compare yung presyo ng 2022 and 2024. Ngayon, kung pag may 2025 pa yan, diyan natin i-compare yung presyo ng 2025, 2026, 2027. Basta, sa CPI, sa pag-compute ng CPI, kailangan mong mamili ng base year. So, dyan mo i-compare lahat ng price, lahat ng market of goods for the years na gusto mong i-analyze. And ang CPI ng base year, always lagi nyo tandaan to, ang CPI, ang Consumer Price Index ng base year is always 100. Always, hindi nagbabago. Okay? So let's try to compute yung CPI nung 2022 by using this formula. So cost of market basket in the current year, so we're pertaining to the year na ina-analyze natin, which is 2022. So ang cost of market basket niya is 150. So kunin natin yan, 150. And then i-divide natin sa cost of market basket ni base year. So ano yung cost of market basket ni base year? That's 250. Diba? So yan yung cost of market basket ni base year. 250 times 100. So remember, this is not 100%, okay? Because CPI is an index, not a percentage. Kaya hindi percentage yung tinutukoy natin when we're computing for CPI. It would just merely be the number. So 150, i-divide natin sa 250, that's times 100. So ang sagot dyan, 60. 60 po ang sagot dyan. So ang CPI noong 2022 ay 60. O how about noong 2024? Compute natin yung CPI noong 2024. So cost of market basket in the current year, which is 2024, ito yun. So ano yung cost of market basket niya? 300. So 300, i-divide natin sa cost of market basket in the base year. This one. So it's 250. So 300 divided by 250 times 100. So let's compute. 300 divided by 250 times 100 is 120. So sagot, ang CPI noong 2024 ay 120. Now, here's the thing, okay? Sabi ko sa inyo kanina, yung computation natin ng CPI is always based on the base year. So kung titignan natin yung data na na-compute natin, if we are going to compare 2022 to your base year, nagkaroon ng deflation. Kasi from 100, naging 60. So the deflation, one way of thinking about it is that there was a deflation from 2023 going to 2022 at around 40%. Kasi 40 yung difference nila. Right? So possible na, that's one way of looking around it, looking into it. Now, if we are going to compare 2023 base year naman to 2024, ito, mapapansin natin na mayroong inflation naman. And there's an inflation of around 20%. If we are going to use the base year. Okay? If we are going to use the base year. Kasi, there is also another way to compute the inflation rate between years using the CPI. And the formula na gagamitin natin to compute the inflation rate between years is this one. Inflation rate is equal to the CPI in your year 2. So wala ka ng base year dito minus the CPI in your year 1 divided by the CPI in your year 1 times 100. So this time, this is already a percentage. Now, of course, hindi natin makukuha yung inflation rate ng 2022. Bakit? Kasi wala naman tayong year 1 for 2022. Tama? Wala naman tayong data ng 2021. So this would be NA. But we can now see kung ano yung inflation rate from 2022 going to 2023. So paano daw yan? Ulit gagamitin natin yung formula. Ano yung CPI ng year 2? So ang year 1 niya is yung previous year. Ito, 2022. Ang year 2 is the base, is 2023. Yan yung current year. So, ang CPI nung year 2, that is 2023, ang CPI ay 100. So, 100 minus CPI in year 1. So, ito yon 2022. So, ang CPI nung year 1 ay 60. I-divide natin sa CPI nung year 1, which is 60. Times 100%. So, magiging sagot na niyan ay 100 minus 60. That's 40 over 60. 40 over 60 times 100%. So 40 divided by 60 times 100%. You get now 66.67%. So ang inflation rate from 2022 going to 2023 is 66.67%. Nakuha? Now, this time around, wala na tayong base year dito Kino-compare natin yung inflation rate between years. Between 2022 and 2023 and later on 2023 to 2024. So, burahin ko lang muna to para mayroong space tayo. Tingnan naman natin, ano naman yung inflation rate noong 2023 going to 2024. So, ano yung inflation rate noong 2024? Let's see. Gamitin ulit natin. Ano yung magiging CPI in year 2? So, ang magiging year 2 na natin, if we compare 2023 and 2024, ang year 2 muna is 2024. Ang year 1 ay 2023. So, ano yung CPI nung year 2? Ang CPI nung year 2 ay 300. So, that's 300 minus the CPI on year 1, which is 2023, 250. Divide it by the CPI in year 1. So, ano yung CPI in year 1? 250. This one. Kasi ang year 1 natin ay 2023. Times 100%. So, 300 minus 250, that's what? 50. 50 over 250 times 100%. Ang sagot ay 50 divided by 250 is 2 times 100%, 20% inflation rate. So dito, mayroon kang 20% inflation rate. Sa 2024, mayroon kang 20% inflation rate from 2023 going to 2024. So I hope that explanation is clear on how to compute for the CPI and on how to compute the inflation rate between years, still using the consumer price index na na-compute natin in those years. Now, what are the causes of inflation? Meron tayong tatlo. It could be a demand pull cause. So, ibig sabihin yan, demand pull means tumataas yung demand. Tumataas yung demand ng mga goods and services na ino-offer sa market. So, anong gagawin ng mga producers via the law of supply and demand? Itataas rin nila yung presyo. So, that's demand pull. Possible cause rin of inflation is cost push. Tumaas yung presyo ng raw materials na ginagamit for production. So, tumataas rin ngayon yung presyo ng pangunahing bilihin. Like for example, ngayon, tumataas ang presyo ng gas and oil. Kaya dahil tumaas ang presyo ng gas and oil, apektado lahat. Lahat ng mga goods natin particularly. Kasi ginagamit natin ang gas and oil to transport these goods na binibili natin. So kapag tumaas yun, tumataas rin yung kanilang cost of production and tataas rin yung presyo. Cost push po ang tawag dyan. Built-in inflation is a type of cost push inflation, pero ang built-in nakafocus yan sa pagtaas ng wages and salaries ng mga workers natin. So for example, tumating yung punto na yung mga workers natin, nagreklamo na sila, nagwelga sila, kailangan daw maitaas yung kanilang sahod kasi tumataas ang presyo ng bilihin. So kapag tumaas ang sahod nila, tataas yung cost of production ng mga businesses, tataas rin yung presyo ng kanilang bilihin. So that would still cause now a consistent increase in the price level of goods and services in your country. Built-in inflation naman ang tawag dyan kapag ang focus is yung increase sa wage and salaries ng ating labor. Our next question, which is related to the question of inflation, ano daw ang tawag sa negative inflation rate or declining prices? So a negative inflation rate or declining prices is known as deflation, disinflation, reinflation, and price shock. If you're going to look at the choices, we can already eliminate two options there. We can eliminate reinflation kasi reinflation, although hindi yan ginagamit sa economics, we can argue logically na ang ibig sabihin yan is another inflation kasi reinflation, so repeat inflation. Price shock is also not related to inflation. I mean, it's related to inflation, but we're looking at something that is negative inflation or declining prices. And yung pinakatamang sagot dyan would either be deflation or disinflation. Ano kaya dyan ang tamang sagot? Ang sagot ay letter A, deflation. Okay? Deflation is your negative inflation or yung patuloy na pagbaba ng presyo. Now, deflation, yan yung opposite ng ating inflation rate. Remember that. So, it can occur kasi patuloy na bumababa yung presyo ng ating pangunahing bilihin. So, what does that mean? It means either, number one, wala masyadong demand. So, yung mga buyers natin hindi masyadong bumibili. Kaya yung mga producers, yung mga businesses and firms, patuloy nila na binababa yung presyo. It could also mean na may oversupply sa market. Sobrang dami ng goods and services, tas wala naman gustong bumili. So patuloy na bumababa ang presyo. Or a deflation is also an indicator na mayroong trouble or recessionary period sa economy. In fact, we don't want, as an economy, we do not want deflation. Kasi kapag may deflation tayo, patuloy na bumababa yung presyo ng bilihin, ibig sabihin lang yan, patuloy din na bumababa yung economic activity ng mga tao. Walang bumibili, walang nagnenegosyo, so maraming magbabankrupt na negosyo and patuloy na mawawalan ng trabaho yung mga tao, tataas ang unemployment rate and bababa yung kanilang income. So hindi maganda ang deflation. So how can we look at deflation in numbers kapag ganyan yung nakikita natin? So if the inflation rate is negative, like for example, in this table, from 2020 going to 2021, negative 11.11%. Tapos, From 2021 to 2022, negative 5.88%. Yan ay patuloy na pagbaba ng presyo. That is deflation. In contrast to what we call naman as disinflation. Now, disinflation, yan yung gusto natin. As a country, gusto natin na mayroon tayong inflation, ayaw lang natin ng pagkataas-taas na inflation, and ang tawag doon is hyperinflation. Yung biglang pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin, ayaw natin yan. Gusto natin, mayroon tayong minimal inflation. Kaya kapag mataas ang ating inflation rate, gusto natin na mayroong disinflation. May inflation pa rin tayo, yun nga lang, bumabagal. It is rising in a very slow rate. So how can we look at this? In numbers, this inflation would look like this. So noong 2021, mayroon kang inflation. Remember, inflation to kasi wala tayong negative sign na 9.09%. Noong 2022, may inflation pa rin pero bumagal, 6.78% na lang. Noong 2023, may inflation pa rin pero mas bumagal at 4.84%, and 2024, mas bumagal at 3.23%. So yan yung pagkakaiba between deflation and disinflation. Okay? Now our next question, natakal ko na to on one of my lecture series before, but it's a kind of a review. So this is an approach used in analyzing economic situation using value judgment. So ano kayang tawag sa approach na yan? We analyze economic problems using value judgment that is termed as normative economics. So ang partner ni normative economics ay positive economics. So i-discuss ko yan ng sabay. And ang partner ni microeconomics and dito sa baba is magpartner si micro at saka si macroeconomics. So let's talk about positive versus normative economics. Now, positive economics, yan yung approach sa pag-aaral ng economics kung saan you are just focusing on the facts. Okay? You are focusing on the facts and you are objective and you are merely measuring what is happening. So, mini-measure mo lang kung ano yung nangyayari. Positive yan. Okay? Facts, objective, and you're measuring what is the economic phenomenon. In normative economics, you're now dealing with opinions. Okay? Opinion na yan, opinionated. So hindi lang facts, may halong opinion na yan, may halong bias. Okay? It is subjective according to the interpretation of the one analyzing it, and it provides a value judgment. Ano ba yung dapat gawin? So amidst the facts that we got from the analysis of our economy, what is it that we should do? Yan yung sinasagot naman ng normative approach to analyzing economic problems. Now mostly, sa positive economics, hindi yan pinagtatalunan ng ating mga kongresista, senator, and secretaries of the different departments here in the Philippines. Mostly nagtatalo-talo tayo when it comes now to the normative aspects of which. Kasi sa normative economics, nagbibigay na tayo ng suggestion kung ano yung dapat gawin. And sa perspective ng iba, hindi yun maganda. Sa perspective naman ng iba, maganda yun. Or sa perspective ng iba, meron silang isasuggest na bago. So mostly, dito nag-aaway yung mga kongresista natin, ekonomista, and yung mga senators natin sa normative aspect ng analysis. So tignan natin itong mga choices na nasa baba and let's determine if this are tignan natin yung mga statements na to sa baba and let's determine whether this is positive or normative economics. So number 1, when prices goes up, quantity demand goes up, is that positive or normative? That is tama, that's positive. Positive kasi you're just describing the law of demand. So yun lang yung nangyayari. Wala ka namang pinoprovide na anything subjective or opinion na statement. How about this? Income is not equal in all countries. That is still positive. You are just merely describing, napapansin mo lang na in all countries nga, hindi pare-parehas yung income or hindi equal yung income. How about this? National income wage should be 1,000 pesos. Now, this one is already normative. Kasi may value judgment ka na when you use the word should. Sinasabi mo, dapat ito ang kailangang gawin. So that's already a value judgment. That's already subjective. That's already an opinion. So that is considered as normative economics. The nation will be better off if the government starts to tax the rich. That is normative. Kasi again, you are providing an opinion. You are saying that the nation will be better if. So, gaganda sa ang nation natin kung ang gobyerno ay, that's already subjective, opinionated, and may value judgment ka na pinoprovide. So, yan yung difference between positive and normative economics. Tingnan naman natin yung difference between micro and macroeconomics. Sa microeconomics, mag-zoom in tayo. We are studying the behavior of economic agents that are involved in the grassroots level of economic activity. So, ibig sabihin, pinag-aaralan natin yung mga economic agents na nakikipagpalitan ng mga goods and services. So, particularly, yung ating mga firms and household, individuals, consumers, and yung behavior ng ating mga firms, businesses, and producers. So, papasok na dyan yung mga topics such as demand and supply, price elasticity, production theory, okay? Consumer theory, yan, papasok yan sa microeconomics. Ang macroeconomics naman, mag-zoom out tayo. Okay? So ito, micro, firms and household. Firms plus household. Sa macroeconomics naman, mag-zoom out tayo pag-aaralan na natin yung buong ekonomiya. Okay? In our case, yung buong ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. So, tinitingnan natin yung mga issues katulad ng inflation, yung patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo sa iyong bansa, unemployment, taxes, monetary and fiscal policies, yung gross domestic product, yan ay part na ng macroeconomics. So, tingnan natin yung mga statements na to and let's classify whether this is a study of micro or macroeconomics. So, if we study yung panaderya ni Mang Juan, that is micro. Bakit? Kasi ang panaderya ni Mang Juan, you are now studying the firm. You might be studying yung kanyang production, yung kanyang cost, and yung profitability. And that is a micro lens. So, micro approach yan. So, that's microeconomics. O, how about inflation rate of highland vegetables? So, nasabi ko kanina, kapag inflation rate ang tinutukoy, macro yan. So, this is macroeconomics. We're looking at how the prices of our highland vegetables is increasing. How about a study on the frictional unemployment in Japan? So, we're talking about unemployment. We're looking at an economic aggregate. So, yung kabuang economy, that is macroeconomics din. Now, frictional unemployment simply means yan yung unemployment na nangyayari kasi yung mga tao nag-resign sila para maghanap ng mas magandang trabaho. That's frictional unemployment. Oh, how your mother budgets expenses. That is microeconomics, okay? Because your mother is part of the household. It is part of the individuals. It is part of the consumers who are organizing their resources para makabili ng goods and services to satisfy their needs and wants. Next question. The income that households are free to spend or save. Ano kaya ang tawag natin sa income na yan? Do we call that as gross domestic product, savings, personal disposable, or gross national product? Now, the income that households are free to spend or save is called your personal disposable income. Okay? Yun. And what is personal disposable income? Personal disposable income is simply your wages, so yung sahod or yung income na nakuha ni individual, ni Filipino citizen. Ima-minus natin yung tax na binayaran niya sa gobyerno, and then ipa-plus natin lahat ng government transfers. So for example, social security benefits, subsidies, unemployment benefits, that would now be part of his or her personal disposable income. Now, personal disposable income, this is very important and critical in measuring yung economic well-being and consumer spending ng isang bansa. Kapag generally speaking kapag ang mga citizens mo, may sapat sila na income na magagamit nila for consumption purposes, that would actually help your economy to run or to grow faster. So in formula, disposable income would now be gross income. So lahat-lahat ng income mo diyan hindi lang kapag multiple yung income streams mo. Like for example, may trabaho ka, meron kang stocks, okay, meron kang interest na nakukuha sa bangko. So lahat-lahat na yan kasama sa gross income. Ililess natin yung tax, then ipa-plus natin at the end yung mga government transfers and benefits, like yung mga nasabi ko kanina. Kapag binigyan ka ni gobyerno ng subsidy, binigyan ka ng ayuda, binigyan ka ng unemployment benefits, may nakuha ka sa SSS mo as pension, kasama po yan sa personal disposable income. Now, one critical thing that you need to understand is that your personal disposable income can be spent in two things, or it can be allocated in two things. It can be allocated as a part of consumption, okay, or it can be allocated as a part of savings. So part of that income, gagamitin mo, part of your disposable income, gagamitin mo yan na pambili ng goods and services na kakailanganin mo or kakailanganin ng household. That's disposable income allocated to consumption. And part of that disposable income naman, you are saving it. Pwedeng isave mo siya sa bangko, pwedeng pambili mo ng stocks or bonds. Basta savings, the purpose of savings is yan yung pera na gagamitin mo in the future. Hindi mo siya gagamitin ngayon, but you will gagamitin mo siya in the future with the hope na lalaki yung value niya possibly, or with the hope na baka in the future may emergency na mangyari, and magagamit mo yung pera na isinave po. Yun yung purpose ng savings. Now, in the concept of disposable income, meron din tayong two important concepts na ang tawag ay MPC and MPS. Or MPC stands for your marginal propensity to consume. Or ito yung sa bawat, isipin nyo na lang, no? Sa bawat piso na kinikita nyo as disposable income, ilang centavos kaya ang napupunta for consumption? Then that's your MPC. And ilang centavo kaya ang napupunta as savings? And that's your MPS. So for example, ang nagagastos mo sa bawat piso na disposable income na nakukuha mo, ang ginagastos mo is 70 cents. So that's 0.7. Yan ngayon yung MPC mo. Tapos of course, yung matitira na 0.3, yun ngayon ang magiging MPS mo. And because of this relationship, MPC plus MPS is always equal to 1. Remember that. MPC plus MPS is always equal to 1. This one is the last question. Medyo mahaba-haba to, but this is interesting and there's a lot of lessons here. So the logos of points, each of which represents a bundle of goods that can be purchased if the entire money is spent, is called indifference curve, budget line, isoquant, or supply curve. So we're looking at a representation. So we are defining a representation, and yung representation daw na to are points kung saan you can purchase a bundle of goods if you use your entire money or if you use a specific income. Ang tawag dyan is a budget. Diba? Budget yon. So, inaalam mo kung ano yung goods na mabibili mo via the money that you have, then that's a budget. And therefore, the answer to this question is budget line. Now, let's define budget line technically. Budget line is all of the possible combinations of two goods. So, two goods lang, remember, yung kino-compare natin dyan. To simplify it, two goods or services that you, as a consumer, can purchase given your particular income. So, isipin nyo, mayroon kayong disposable income or meron kayong income. Okay? Mayroon kayong income na gagamitin nyo to buy two goods. Okay? Ngayon, syempre, yung two goods na yan, may prices yan. So yung combination of these two goods in relation to your income will now define your budget line. Dapat, yung combination ng two goods na to, kapag bibilhin mo, dapat hindi siya lalampas sa yung budget or sa income mo at that time. Budget na lang. That's the right way of thinking about it. Yun yung sinasabi ng budget line. So meron kang two goods na gustong bilhin, dapat yung combination ng two goods na yon hindi lalampas doon sa pera na nakabudget for those two goods. So let's look at it in a tabular representation. For example, ang budget mo ay 100 pesos. So kung ang budget mo ay 100 pesos, mayroon kang dalawang goods na gustong bilhin. You can either buy books, example lang to or you can either buy snacks. Now, if you choose to buy books, if you choose to use all of your 100 pesos to buy books, kung ang presyo ng book ay 10 pesos per book, ang presyo ng snack ay 5 pesos per snack, so kung lahat ng budget mo, gagamitin mo na pambili ng book, makakabili ka ng 10 libro. Kasi 10 books times 10 would be 100 pesos, ubos na yung budget mo. So kapag lahat ay ginugol mo sa books, wala ka nang mabibiling snacks. Kapag bumili ka naman ng 9 books, so that's 9 times 10 is 90, may matitira ka pang 20 pesos dun sa budget mo. Kasi 100 minus 90, 100 minus 90, mayroon kang matitirang 20 pesos. And doon sa 20 pesos na yon, ilang snack ang kaya mong mabili? 10 pesos pala, sorry, not 20 pesos. Doon sa 10 pesos na yon, ilang snack ang kaya mong mabili? You can still buy 2 snacks. Kasi 5 pesos ang isang snack, so 5 times 2, then that's 10 pesos, ubos na yung budget mo. And so on and so forth. So you get the idea. So dito, kapag lahat ng 100 pesos mo, binili mo ng 20 na snack, wala nang matitira na pambili ng libro. That is your budget line, or we also term that as our budget constraint. Okay? Now, graphically speaking, it would look like this. Okay? So, kapag i-graph natin yung points na nandito, yung budget line mo is sloping downward. Right? Kasi nagkakaroon yan ng substitution effect. So, every time na ini-increase mo yung pagpili mo sa isang particular good, nagdi-decrease yung kabila and vice versa. Now, the budget constraint can be understood as well under the lens of indifference curve. So, ano yung indifference curve natin? This is a curve, particularly, which symbolizes the combination of two goods between which ikaw as a consumer, makakakuha ka ng same level of satisfaction. Sa pag-consume kasi natin ng goods, nakakakuha tayo ng satisfaction. Now, kapag meron kang two goods, some combinations of that two goods will give you the same level of satisfaction. Graphically speaking, it would look like this. So kapag, let's say, yung indifference curve 3 mo, nakakakuha ka kasi mataas yan, nakakakuha ka ng 300 na utils or 300 satisfaction levels. Yung indifference curve 2 ay 200, and indifference curve 1 ay 100, mapapansin natin, may variation dun sa satisfaction na makukuha mo per indifference curve. But, whether you pick this amount of good Y and this amount of good X, or this amount of good I and this amount of good X, basta nasa line ka nung IC1, pare-parehas yung satisfaction level, 100 ang makukuha mo. Same is true with IC3. Kapag ito yung pinili mong good Y and ito yung pinili mong good X, or ito yung pinili mong good Y and ito yung pinili mong good X, 300 lang makukuha mong satisfaction level doon sa combination na yun. So whatever the combination is, it doesn't matter. Basta, pare-parehas yung satisfaction na makukuha mo so long as you are playing around that indifference curve. So long as you are moving along those indifference curve. Now, if we're going to combine it, yung point of tangency between your budget and the indifference curve that would provide you the maximum satisfaction, yun daw yung pipiliin na quantity or combination ni consumer. So in our case, kung ito yung ating budget, the blue line here, ang mamamaximize niya yung satisfaction niya at indifference curve 2. O bakit hindi kay indifference curve 1? Kasi kay indifference curve 1, mababa yung satisfaction. Yes, gagastos ka, igagastusin mo lahat ng pera mo, for example, at this point, pero hindi mo makukuha, hindi mo mamamaximize yung satisfaction levels mo. Hindi doon yung level kung saan pinakamataas yung satisfaction. O bakit hindi pwede kay I3? Hindi pwede kay I3 kasi lampas na yan sa budget mo. Overspending ka na. Whereas kapag si I2 naman, underspending ka naman. Now, the idea of indifference curve and budget line ay nakafocus sa pag-aaral natin sa consumer. Ngayon, kapag pag-aaralan natin yung producer, mayroon din silang similar representations or model. And we call that as ISOCOS and ISOC1. So yung ISOCOS, yan yung parang budget line ni producer. Ano ba yung budget niya to produce a specific good or services? Yan yung sinasagot ng isang ISOCOS. Yung ISOC1 naman, yan yung combination ng dalawang inputs that would provide them the same amount of total output. Yun yung ISOC1. So of course, ang gusto natin is yung points of tangency ulit, kung saan si ISOCOS would meet the ISOC1 curve that would maximize yung production ni producer. Okay? So there's a lot of lessons that we've discussed ngayon. I hope you've learned something new, especially in economics, and I hope magamit nyo to pagdating sa inyong exam. Thanks a lot and God bless everyone.